You're looking at a man who got beat and beat hard. A man who put all of his cookies in one box in week one. I went after it. I thought I was going to win, and I got beat. A man, after Clyde Edwards-Helaire runs 52 yards, thinks he's going to win and get a big win just for a Josh Palmer trash-ass touchdown to beat me down. The chalk donkeys have risen, and me, I'm just beaten. Let's get into it.
Tell them to bring me my money.
What just happened in week one? Wow, it was terrible. Last night was terrible. At least the Chiefs won. We'll take that. But I'm telling you, it hurt because I was so close. Welcome in. It's the Rumbles of Red. Thank you so much for being here. Go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe. And how did you do in week one? Let me know in the comments. How did it go for you? You just saw how it went for me. I'm a beaten man. I can't even show my face right now because it hurts so bad. But what about for you? How did you do? And while those comments trickle in, let me run you through what we're going to be doing tonight. We're going to review last night's game. I want to show you that lineup that was oh so close to the bank just to end up on the outside looking in. I want to talk about late swap today. Had a couple questions over the week. What is late swap? I want to explain that to you a little bit and why I do it and why I did it this week and show you an example of when I did a late swap. We'll go position by position, kind of switch it up a little bit this week. Just go and hit each position, tell you some studs I like, where the values at this week, some stacking options, and then let's build some lineups like we always do. Let's check out some lineups and how they fit well together and how some of these stacking options fit well together. We're active early. What the hell is happening? Well, sorry. I lost us some money this weekend. And we're going to get it back this week, though. That's what's great about daily fantasy. We can just jump right in to the next week. Let's show you all here what happened last night for me. It was tough. There was a point in time where I thought everything was gonna work out and work out for the best, and then it didn't. Here is a photo. Let me get this a little larger here for you guys. This is where I was after the Clyde Edwards-Helaire 52-yard run. He breaks it off. They throw a flag. I'm sitting here thinking, great, it's holding. They're coming back. Ends up, I think it was a personal foul, face mask, whatever. I'm sitting here at the top. My lineup, Mike Williams in the MVP. I'm 1%. I'm the only one that had him in the MVP. Justin Herbert, Clyde, MVS, and Gerald Everett. Clyde rips it off. I'm over here in second place. I'm MVS catch away or another 10, 12-yarder by Clyde from taking first place. I don't think Clyde was even in another snap after that. Jerick McKinnon was in the rest of the game. Chiefs go down, kick a field goal, and Chargers take the ball back. Down 10. You all know what happened. Josh Palmer, yes, the chalk of chalk last night. Everybody played Josh Palmer because he was so cheap. He takes it down. He gets a touchdown. I drop in the rankings, end up just on the outside of first place. It was rough. And that's the whole premise of where we're starting today. Is it was rough. But that's in the past now. We got to move forward into week 2. And we're going to look at the main slate. Look at the main slate here on FanDuel and see where we can learn from last week and see how we can improve this week. I'll pull it up here for you all. Another thing I want to touch on is late swap. We talked about that a little bit. A lot of people had asked questions about it. And why do you late swap? I was kind of tilting over late swapping this weekend. And one of the reasons is I wasn't quite, wasn't really ready yet. I didn't prepare well enough to where I was going to go if certain things happened. I'll pull up my lineup from last week. But eventually I end up late swapping onto Patrick Mahomes and a triple stack. So I put Kelsey in there, MVS in there, and I think Juju as well. It ended up not working out. But as I show you this lineup here, you'll understand why I felt like I had to go that far, especially with a quarterback like Mahomes. He ends up actually flipping over at, here we go, 25% owned, which was rough. Let me show you here. So why do we late swap, right? I go Devontae Smith. He puts up a huge goose egg. This lineup is dead. It's dead in the water. 112 people, and I'm sitting in like 98th place after the first half of the first games, and I know from there I'm dead in the water. I originally had Hollywood Brown on this team, and I needed to get different, but I wasn't willing to get off Patrick Mahomes because I didn't think he was going to be as rostered as he was in this. When I turned it over and he's 21%, I was not really happy about that. Ultimately, I probably should have went to a Justin Herbert type here in the afternoon, somebody like that. See if I can find a Justin Herbert team. I don't know where he was at for rostership here, but you see guys like Jameis at sub 10%. When I was looking through them all in the first half, I expected Patrick Mahomes to come in closer to 10%, not 25% or 21%. And that's really ultimately what made this late swap a poor decision on my part. And that's just from me being ill-prepared to come off of a guy like Mahomes, where he had a great game. 5 touchdowns, 360 yards, 5 touchdowns last week. You like the 34.9 points, but when 20% of the contest also has him, and you had a terrible first game, Alvin Kamara bust. Travis Etienne doesn't do anything at all. Devontae Smith gives you the goose egg. When those things happen, you're not going to get there. I didn't have Clyde on this team. If I go to Clyde instead of maybe Juju, I probably have a better chance of maybe getting to min cash. But I just didn't give myself a chance by staying on Patrick Mahomes in this instance. I probably should have just went really weird. Now, I would have went really weird. Daniel Jones, he scores 18 or somewhere in there. I'm still not getting there. But the whole premise is you want to give yourself a chance to find the money. And after the first game, first couple of games here on Sunday, I just didn't really necessarily have that chance. Man, Devontae Smith, guys, what happened to Devontae Smith? He killed you at everything you played him in. If you started him in season long, which you probably did if you drafted him, because you probably didn't have enough guys out there to not play Devontae Smith, the big goose egg, 4 targets, no catches, that's rough. You don't like to see that. And I don't expect that to go away anytime soon. I think that he's always going to be the second guy there in Philly. And if you roster him, you're just going to have to live with that. Let's jump in here to quarterbacks. Who's your favorite quarterback this week? Looking on FanDuel, who are you looking at playing this week at quarterback? Let me know in the chat here. It's all about the Browns. That's what my team looked like last week, is the Browns. I actually like the Browns a little bit, a couple of spots this week. I don't think I'm going Jacoby Brissett, though. When I say I don't think I am, I mean I'm not. That's not happening. No Joey Brissett. Can't talk tonight. Who else is here tonight? All right, Lamar Jackson. Not bad. I've got Lamar Jackson here. My first one on the list. It's like somebody's been reading my list. Lamar Jackson, $8,200. He's got the highest median projection on the week and the highest ceiling on the slate. He's not the highest price quarterback, though. He's my favorite quarterback stud, and I really think everybody else is too. Right now, the roster percentages I'm looking at, he got him around 15%. which usually means more in my 112 person league that I play in. If big tournaments have them at 15%, I have to assume that probably closer to 20 to 25% there with Lamar Jackson. My main concern here is he only ran the ball 6 times last week. A little concerning because the reason you're starting Lamar is because he's got that rushing floor with that rushing upside as well to go along with it. So I'm a little concerned about that. But again, at $8,200, not the most expensive quarterback on the slate. I really like Lamar this week. I got another one here. Jalen Hurts. This is the chalk of last week. Everybody went to Jalen Hurts and he hit. I did not play Jalen Hurts last week. I thought he was going to be rostered too much. He was at 20%. Instead, I played 20% Patrick Mahomes. So apparently I'm also a chalk donkey that just didn't hit. I'm not going to go with Jalen Hurts this week. I think he's just going to be too highly owned again this week, and I'm trying to get off of that a little bit. The next guy I'm going to say here is Kyler Murray, $8,500. He is the most expensive quarterback on the slate. We're not just saying this because he's the most expensive. You got to play the expensive guys because you don't always want to play the expensive guys. The weapons aren't necessarily healthy there in Arizona. But I think Kyler Murray is going to be the very overlooked this week at $8,500. Why pay up for Kyler Murray when I can play Lamar Jackson at $8,200? If I'm going to pay up for a quarterback, why not play Lamar? That's what everybody else is going to be thinking. Kyler Murray coming in sub 5% rostered potentially, and he's in the game with the highest total of the week. So why wouldn't we want to create some leverage there off of Lamar, pay up a little bit more for Kyler? Nobody else is going to be rostering him. And we have reasoning because he is that highest total. They are in that highest total of the week. It should really provide some leverage for you. I really like Kyler Murray this week. Joe Burrow against the Cowboys. I think that Joe Burrow's in a great bounce back spot. He really needs it. I'm worried about T. Higgins. Not sure if he's going to play yet or not. I don't necessarily love him here for FanDuel. Obviously, if you're playing season long, you're definitely going to be starting Joe Burrow. You can't necessarily sit him this week. He's just too valuable to your team. So make sure you've got him going if you're in season long. But for FanDuel here, it's going to pull it up. Look at what his price was. I just don't think I can get there. If you do get there, you're probably going to want to double stack him. And if Higgins isn't out, maybe go Chase Boyd. But yeah, $7,900. That's, again, if I'm going to pay up there, the same thing I just talked about with Kyler, I'll just pay up $300 for Lamar. Or I'll save some money. I'll save some money and go Trey Lance here. As Chris says in the chat, asking is Lance going to dance this week? I think he's probably going to be the cash quarterback of the week. Seems like he's getting a lot of steam out there. Everybody's really talking about Trey Lance in a bounce back spot against Seattle at home. 10.5-point favorites. No Elijah Mitchell. No George Kittle. So they're expecting maybe he's going to use his legs a little bit more. And I agree with all of that. I will probably stay away from Trey Lance because I do think he's going to be that high owned quarterback that, if I'm going to take a highly owned quarterback, I'm going to take Lamar. It's the same thing as we keep talking about. I just want to make sure I have some leverage there. Trey Lance right now looking at about 12% rostered, which would land him somewhere in the top 5 range this week. So if he was sub 5% like Kyler Murray is, I think I'd be all over Trey Lance this week at home against Seattle. Let me give you a cheap guy here. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz at $7,400. This is another guy that should be sub 5% rostered. He's my favorite cheap play that you can also be contrarian with. Nobody's really going down for Carson Wentz. Nobody's really looking to stack up this game, but it is the second highest total of the week. So Vegas is telling us that this game should produce a lot of points. Why not get some quarterback action out of this game? I'm going to pull this up, show you here real quick. Look at this. Carson Wentz is way down here. You're not going to find him without scrolling down a ways. Make this bigger for you all. Here he is. Carson Wentz down here. The reason I like Carson Wentz the most this week is against this. He's playing against this Detroit Lions defense. Wentz finished third last week. And I mentioned in my season-long podcast here, another damn fantasy show, another damn fantasy podcast. And I said Wentz is going to be my streamer of the week. So even in season long, I really like going to Carson Wentz. Jalen Hurts ended up as quarterback 4 last week against this same Lions defense. Why is nobody talking about Carson Wentz this week? This isn't, to me, chasing last week. That's really easy to do. But he's in a great situation this week and in a game environment with the second highest total of the week. Neither one of these defenses are going to stop each other. And I think the Lions and Jared Goff are going to be good enough to push the Washington Commanders just a little bit. I like Carson Wentz this week as my cheap quarterback play. A couple other guys here, just some points per dollar plays that are really popping right now in projections. Derek Carr at 7,300. Tua in that Baltimore-Miami game, he's at 6,800, and he's popping pretty good point projections. And then Russell Wilson, I'm going to talk about him a little bit more later on, but he seems to be in a pretty good spot there against the Houston Texans. Let's move on to running back. Who's your favorite running back of the week? Good stack here. I'll hit this real quick. Good stack here. Wentz, McLaurin, and DeAndre Swift coming back. I agree. I think that's a really sharp play. Swift, another guy. He's on the injured list right now, so I think he's a guy that not very many people are going to be after right now. If he's active and he looks healthy, he's going to come in pretty low rostered this week, so that could be a pretty sharp play there. Again, that Wentz stack, I love that. I'm going to I'll bring him back up here in a little bit as well. But let's go ahead and move on to those running backs, mentioning DeAndre Swift. If Swift is out, Jamal Williams definitely becomes the chalk of the week. You know I'm going to stay away from that. I don't want anything to do with that in my tournament plays. But what about you? Who are you going to play this week? Who's your favorite running back on the slate? You see here, Jonathan Taylor up the top again, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon. We just talked about DeAndre Swift. A couple studs up here, all over 8,000. I'm going to go Saquon Barkley, $8,800 here. He's probably going to come in over 20% rostered in your contest. So you're going to have to get a little bit weird elsewhere, but he's not the chalkiest running back on the slate. I'm going to talk about him in a moment. Last week, though, 18 carries, 164 yards, and a touchdown. He was the offense, and I believe he'll be the offense again this week. Wan'Dale Robinson doesn't look like he's going to play this week. I don't know what's going on with Kadarius Toney. He's not going to play. What are they? They're going to play Richie James. I think it's like their fifth wide receiver that might play this week. Kenny Galladay's dust. So they don't have anything in the passing game. They're really going to have to lean on Saquon Barkley, a guy who caught 6 passes last week as well for another 30 yards. Just dominated. He ended up as the RB1 last week. And again, we're not playing him this week solely because he smashed last week. We're playing him this week because he's against the Carolina Panthers, who got destroyed on the ground last week. We're playing him because he's the only person on that offense. The usage is too high. And for just $8,800, being $1,200 less than Jonathan Taylor, a couple hundred, a couple $100 less than Christian McCaffrey. We can save a little bit against those top guys, and we can still get our stud running back in Saquon Barkley. Another guy here above 8K that I like this week is Joe Mixon. $8,300. He's going to be modestly rostered this week, really looking in the low 10s to 12, 15% compared to, Barkley and Chubb and Leonard Fournette's getting some steam this week. Some of these other guys in this range who will be, more closer to the 20% range. I think Joe Mixon really gets lost in the shuffle this week. Look for Cincy to really rely on this defense. We just mentioned, Drew said in the chat, he likes Joe Burrow against Dallas. I don't blame you for liking Joe Burrow, but for from a DFS tournament standpoint, maybe I flip that a little bit and I go Joe Mixon here. Ideally, the Bengals are just going to rely on their defense, especially after how banged up Burrow got last week. I don't think they want him dropping back and taking the heat like he did. Maybe give it a week or two. Rely on that defense against a Cooper Rush at quarterback on the other side and just run the ball, pound the ball, and establish it this week. I already mentioned, he's going to be low rostered as well. So it's just a nice leverage play, I believe, to get on Joe Mixon. I probably can't get to the Bengals defense. They're going to be the chalk defense on DraftKings because they're so cheap on DraftKings, but they're 5,000. They're the top defense on FanDuel, and I rarely ever pay up for defense on FanDuel. So a secondary stack would be tough, but I do think that if you want to go a little correlation with Joe Mixon, CeeDee Lamb, you could potentially get there. I think you can also just play Joe Mixon by himself this week. Let's talk about the cheap guys. Get further down here in the mid 6Ks. Guys like James Robinson, who had a really good game last week. Josh Jacobs, Rashad Penny, Jeff Wilson. Elijah Mitchell's out this week. Jeff Wilson could be a guy. But this is the guy this week, right? Darrell Henderson, 82% of the snaps. That's elite. He is the RB1 in LA, and he's priced at just $6,200 this week. That is not RB1 pricing for an RB1. The Rams are a 10.5 point. Let me see here. Where are they at? Rams 10-point favorite in a 46.5 point game, the third highest total of the week. So you like that a lot. Give me some Darrell Henderson and give everybody else some Darrell Henderson. He will be the highest owned running back of the week. He is the chalk of the week. He's monster chalk. Everybody's going to be doing it. He's popping in all the optimals, though. No matter how many lineups you run against these optimals, he is in there 60, 70, 80% of the time. So everybody's going to play him. Everybody's going to follow that and play him. But I think he's a good play still. I'm not 100% off of him just because of that. Usually I am. But in a spot like this, in a game that I think LA wants to come out, they're on 10 days rest. They should be really dominating. Who are they playing? Oh, the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. They should dominate the Falcons here. I'm not worried about the chalk. But if you do play Henderson and you're in a tournament, you have to get different somewhere else. You're going to have to get weird. Maybe you put him in your flex, and if things go really wrong in the first half of the day, then you flip off of him. If things go really right, you can just ride him. Ride the chalk a little bit there. That's the nice thing about an afternoon game for the LA Rams this week. Wish I smashed last week. What about Robinson? ETN said they are running this week. Look, Robinson was the clear-cut number one last week, and that bothers me a little bit because I ran ETN. We'll take a look at my lineup here later. But I put ETN in there with a Jags defensive secondary correlation. It didn't work out. James Robinson was the man last week. And I don't expect him not to be the man again this week. I think Travis Etienne is probably going to take another week or two, especially if James Robinson is healthy. 11 carries, 66 yards, plus he had a rushing touchdown, a couple of targets here. So James Robinson, if you're playing one of the two, I'm definitely taking Robinson over Travis Etienne. I don't necessarily love the matchup against the Colts. I think the Colts' weakness is really their defensive backs there in Indianapolis. Question here: Russell or Kyler Murray? In daily, I'm taking Russell if I need to save a little salary. In my tournaments I mentioned earlier, I like Kyler Murray this week because he should be overlooked. He's the most expensive quarterback on FanDuel, and I don't think he's going to be played. I think he'll come in sub 10% rostered. He's a great leverage play against Lamar Jackson, who will be one of the highest owned quarterbacks this week, and you only have to pay $300 more. So if I'm looking for that type of leverage, I'll take Kyler in the highest total of the week. If I'm trying to go just to save a little salary, I do like Russ a little bit, and we're going to talk about a way to get different and stack up Russ and this Denver offense against the Houston Texans here before too long. A couple other points per dollar running back plays. James Conner, 7,600. He's popping in some optimals. Josh Jacobs in this highly touted scoring game of Las Vegas versus Arizona, $6,600. He's looking like a pretty strong points per dollar play. If you go Josh Jacobs, it's so hard for me to click Josh Jacobs, but I think, I think he's going to get steamed a little bit this week. I'm not really about Josh Jacobs, but he is popping in the optimals. And then Christian McCaffrey at 9,000. He's $1,000 less than Jonathan Taylor. He is popping. He will always pop unless he's at the 10,000, 10,500 range like Jonathan Taylor is. Then Christian McCaffrey is going to continue to pop for points per dollars. All right, let's move on to wide receiver. I think that's good enough there for our running backs. I don't think there's anybody else here I wanted to touch base on. So let's talk wide receivers. Again, in the chat, who's your favorite wide receiver this weekend? Who's your favorite wide receiver on Sunday on the main slate? Who are you looking at? Are you paying up? You got a couple cheap guys there that you like. Who's your favorite wide receiver this week? Let's show you a couple of these wide receivers here. Cooper Kupp at the top, Devontae Adams, Jamar Chase, Mike Evans up here. He's got a little injury going on. Missed a couple practices this week. Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman, the chalk of last week. Are you going back to Pittman this week? CeeDee Lamb with quarterback issues. He's got Cooper Rush at the helm this week. How do you like that? Marquise Brown in that high-scoring Arizona-Las Vegas game. Terry McLaurin, Jalen Waddle, Deontay Johnson. Who of these guys over 7K do you like this week? I'll tell you who I like. And it's this man right here, Devontae Adams. Dominates last week. This is the highest scoring game on the slate. We keep going back at it, but this is the game that most everybody wants a piece of, and rightfully so. $8,800 here. Probably close to 30% rostered, especially after his 17 targets he had last week. Derek Carr's looking for this guy early. He's looking for him often. I expect the same this week. Devontae Adams is still the alpha dog, man. He is the alpha, and it doesn't matter what team he plays on. He showed it last week in Las Vegas. And the Chiefs just carved up this secondary in Arizona. This secondary is not good. Patrick Mahomes throws 5 touchdown passes against him. Derek Carr isn't Patrick Mahomes, but he's serviceable. And with how sad and bad this defense is, look for Devontae Adams to get his anytime he wants it. Again, a really strong play, but it's everybody's going to play it. So if you do go this route, you really have to get weird and different somewhere else. I don't mind just a mini stack here with Devontae Adams and a Hollywood Brown with, maybe that's when I get weird with that like Washington stack or something like that, or maybe a Denver stack that might not be as highly rostered, something to that matter. But if you play Devontae Adams, you really got to get weird. Maybe you play Josh Jacobs with Devontae Adams. That would be really odd. And not very many people are going to do that, if anybody. So just different ways. You got to get a little different here if you're going to play Devontae Adams in tournaments. But I'm not scared of playing him because he's got that slate breaking potential. My second wide receiver here is my man, Deebo Samuel, 8,000. This guy should come in way less roster than Devontae Adams. Probably less rostered than Cooper Kupp, who's way up here at 9,700. So you're saving $1,700. Plus, he should be less rostered than Cooper Kupp. Probably a little chalky. Looks like he's coming in around that 20% threshold. But I said it earlier, no Elijah Mitchell, no George Kittle. Deebo should be the focal point of this offense. He should get some carries out of the backfield. He's going to see his targets. He ran in for a touchdown last week. So San Francisco is not changing up their offense that much just because it's Trey Lance, and they're just adding to it. San Francisco last week was in the monsoon. I mean, they were playing in a pond, essentially. It was what it looked like. Throw that game out the window. Deebo Samuel will still continue to be one of the best plays and players in the league. Give me some Deebo Samuel this week. Save on these guys. Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp. Deebo Samuel cheaper and probably less rostered. Need Monday advice. Well, we usually talk mostly about the main slate here, but JJ is going to be fine. I'll play plenty of JJ MVP on my single showdown slates on Monday. This Monday will actually be interesting because the main slate has one less game than it had last week because Monday Night Football's got a double header. That's usually first, on the first weekend of the football, but this time they're going on the second weekend. So that'll be interesting. I'll be playing plenty of single game for both games, and I'll play a little bit of that short slate. Sometimes those short slates could be plus EV because a lot of people are just throwing in lineups. I've been that person many of times where I get home, I throw a couple lineups in there. I feel like I just want a reason to watch the games. So if you really put some thought into it, look at some projections, figure out where some of those roster percentages will lie, you might be able to find some leverage there in that short 2-game slate on Monday Night Football. So here's to winning a little bit of money that night. All right, I talked about these expensive guys, but you're going to have to save some money somewhere. I can't just tell you only about the expensive guys. They're obviously expensive for a reason. They're really easy for me to talk to, right? Of course you want to play Devontae Adams. Of course you want to play Cooper Kupp and Deebo Samuel. But you gotta save some salary somewhere. So let's take a look down here. In the 6K, 62, Jerry Jeudy here, 6,300. Scores a touchdown last week. I still like Courtland Sutton a little bit better this week. DJ Moore was non-existent last week. Jarvis Landry with a pretty good game. He seems more like a DraftKings type play because of the amount of catches he had. But he can find his way into the end zone. Don't really love the matchup against Tampa Bay for New Orleans overall. I don't really love this game overall. I'd probably take the under in New Orleans versus Tampa Bay. But you never know there. Chase Claypool, Devin Duvernay, 2 touchdowns last week. Big time. Is he going to repeat this week? We'll see. But here's where I'm going again. Want to get some cheap guys. Want to have some value. My value play here is Elijah Moore. Who's your value play at wide receiver? Who do you like for a value at wide receiver as I talk through Elijah Moore here? this isn't a great game. New York Jets versus Cleveland Browns. It's kind of, muddy, nasty. Two teams that really aren't efficient on offense. Quite terrible sometimes. But Elijah Moore is going to be a low rostered wide receiver who earned 7 targets last week. You can get a guy at 5,800 and 7 targets. He catches 5 or 6 of those, maybe breaks one, maybe he falls into the end zone. You're going to be feeling really good about that $5,800 price tag. This is where earlier somebody asked about the Browns. This is where I like this game the most. It's a mini stack here. I don't think it's going to be popular at all, but it makes a lot of sense. Nick Chubb against a terrible Jets run defense, a Jets run defense that we have targeted many times in the past. And on the other side, you bring back Elijah Moore, who is still, the number one wide receiver. Garrett Wilson isn't quite there yet. I'm not going to believe in that until I see it big time from Garrett Wilson. So give me a little mini stack here with Nick Chubb and Elijah Moore. Together, their price is pretty average, and I think they should be able to beat that in a game environment that is not going to be one that everybody's going to be targeting. That is for sure. Hunter Renfrow, is he going to get some love again? I think that he's going to get plenty of play here. Let's take a look at the rosters here. Let's go to wide receiver. I assume he's in this big time game right here. There he is. Yeah, they're projecting right now 18%. So yeah, he's going to have plenty of love this weekend. Not somebody I'm going to go to. I'd rather just go to Devontae Adams. If I'm going to play a Raider, why not just go for the alpha and Devontae Adams? That's where I'd rather go this week. Let me give you a couple of points per dollar plays here. Jerry Jeudy, 6,300. I just mentioned him earlier. I really like that Denver game. I think you can stack it up in multiple ways. Julio Jones, 5,700. Chris Godwin is already out. Russell Gage still doesn't look healthy. Mike Evans has got something going on now. Julio participates in practice. He is active already for Sunday. He looked good. I heard on a podcast, I think it was the footballer said he caught like a 35, 40 yard or something there from Tom. And it was like Tom's longest air yard pass of his career in Tampa Bay. So he must like him some Julio as well. I like that going on. Christian Kirk, 6,500. Jacksonville Jaguars team. I like Christian Kirk this week. Seems like he's going to be overlooked here in this mid-range. But I said it earlier, I think this Colts defense is really one to target on the back end. So that's through the wide receivers and pick on these DBs. Am I missing anybody there? Cheap guys, some value plays at wide receiver. All right, let's move on to tight end. Who are you playing at tight end this week? You have no Travis Kelce, so you can't pick on him. Who are you going to play this week here at tight end? Let's take a look at it. Mark Andrews up here at the top. Darren Waller. Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, the third highest tight end in the slate. What is happening, FanDuel? What is happening? Why is Taysom Hill more expensive than George Kittle, more expensive than Kyle Pitts? Come on, man. He's just a running back. A running back who plays about 12% of the snaps. You don't think Tampa Bay is going to be all over that? I'm not playing any Taysom Hill. I don't even want to think about it, honestly. No Taysom Hill this week for me. Who are you playing at tight end? I'm going Mark Andrews here, 7,400. Obviously, he's the most expensive tight end on the slate, but he's pretty well separated from everybody else this week. He's really the only pay-up option that I like. Not really. I mean, I don't mind Darren Waller. He might be overlooked again in that high-flying game, But Mark Andrews is the way to go for me. If you're going to be paying up, sneaky game here with the Ravens and the Dolphins. Guys, this game is so low on the total. Where are we at? 44.5 is what I saw earlier today. 44.5 between the Baltimore Ravens, Miami Dolphins, Tua versus Lamar. Give me some of this game and give me some Mark Andrews here. I think a nice stack, you go Tyreek or Jalen Waddle, whoever you want here, mini stack him with Mark Andrews. You can just run a skinny stack, Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack. I like that a lot. Nothing wrong there. You can really get creative with this game, but relatively low owned, relatively overlooked game. At least it's so far. Things change over the next day or two. I'm not moving the needle by any means, but there's plenty of people out in the industry that are. And if they start talking up Mark Andrews, Lamar. Uh-oh, you lost me. I don't know what just happened there. J.K. Dobbins will be back. Let me find my camera here. There we are. That was odd. So anyways, this game I don't think is going to necessarily be highly rostered. Essentially what I'm getting at. I like Mark Andrews, 13.5, 14% there at tight end. Cheap Logan Thomas, better believe it. Talked about him as my streamer of the week for season long this week on Another Damn Fantasy podcast. Joe, check that out. But absolutely, I do like Logan Thomas. And I really like Logan Thomas if I'm playing him with Carson Wentz. I'm not playing Logan Thomas without Carson Wentz. But if you're trying to get real weird, you haven't figured it out yet. I kind of like the Washington Commanders this week. It's going to be weird. Nobody's really going to be on it that much. If I can do I don't know, maybe a Washington or a Wentz, McLaurin, Logan Thomas type stack, could be something worth looking at. Yeah, I know you guys lost me there for a minute. Sorry about that. Hopefully, I am back and we are ready to rock. If y'all are liking this, go ahead and hit the like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're just having a good time here on a Friday night. Grab your beverage. Let's just talk through some of this. Love hanging out with you all. Happy that you are here and hanging out with me. And we're going to talk through we're going to finish up our tight ends here. Talk through some stacks, and we're going to build some lineups together. You guys ready to build some lineups? Let's do this. You got to have a punt play tight end. I can't leave you all without a punt play tight end here. Okay. My punt play tight end this week was definitely Albert O. And I am not saying his last name. I can't say it. I'm not even going to try it. Look, Albert O, $5,100, sub 10% this week. He is a punt tight end, and ownership here for tight ends probably elevated a little bit just because there's so many options down here. Logan Thomas, Albert O, Hunter Henry, maybe. Noah Fant looked good last week. People might go to him. Are people going to go to O.J. Howard as a bring back after last week's game and just chase the box score? I'm going to go with Albert O. 6 targets last week, excuse me. And this is what I'm going to do with the Broncos. If I'm going to go Broncos this week, I'm going to onslaught these guys. I'm going to take Russ, maybe Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, Albert O. I just want to hammer them all. Against the Houston Texans this week, one of the largest spreads. Again, I talked about it with the Rams earlier. Take one of these spreads and choose them and just go 10-point spread right now for the Denver Broncos at home. An embarrassing loss to the Seattle Seahawks on Monday Night Football. They're ready to get back to it. They're in a get-right spot here. I'm not afraid to just stack them up and just onslaught that thing. Couple other tight ends, Darren Waller, 6,800. I mentioned earlier. TJ Hawkinson, $5,700. He's popping in some optimals here as a points per dollar play. That Washington Detroit game once again. And then Kyle Pitts at 5,900. Still too cheap. If Kyle Pitts was a wide receiver, you would be playing him every single week at 5,900. Just too cheap for a wide receiver playing tight end in a game that Atlanta's going to be chasing the whole game. At least that's what Vegas expects. That's what I expect. I don't mind if you're trying to get away from the Rams a little bit here. Maybe you have a Allen Robinson, Kyle Pitts, a Darrell Henderson, Kyle Pitts, some kind of stack like that. I like Kyle Pitts there in those Rams stacks or a little mini stack with a Rams player. Already playing that Commander stack. That's right. I'm going to build a team here with it here before too long. Let's talk about some of these stacking options. Who are your favorite stacks this week? We talked a little bit about the Commanders, but who else is out there? Who's somebody you're stacking up? What team are you stacking up this week? We'll talk through some stacks here. We'll build some lineups. Who are you stacking up this week? My favorite stack and probably the public's favorite stack this week, Derek Carr, Devontae Adams, Darren Waller. I want to double stack Derek Carr if I'm going that way. There's some quarterbacks out there. A single stack's just fine. I'll take the double stack when it comes to Derek Carr. And I'll bring Hollywood back again. I did that last week. Ended up late swapping off of it. But I like Hollywood. There's not a lot of weapons there in Arizona. They're going to have to throw to keep up because, again, their defense is pretty trash. And I do expect the Las Vegas Raiders to move the ball pretty well this week. My second stack here is that Denver stack. My favorite part of it, the favorite piece to it would be a Russ double stack with Cortland Sutton and Albert O, and bring nobody back from Houston. I'm not touching Houston this week. I think this is a get right game. I said that earlier about the Broncos. They can't afford to fall 2 games behind the Chiefs. The Broncos came in here riding. They think they're going to take down the division. That goes through Kansas City, and you cannot come out and start 0-2, losing to the Seahawks and to the Texans. If you have any hope to make this season a great one, everybody's out here touting them. You know, they're going to win the division. They're going to be the 5 seed or maybe the 7 seed. They're going to make the playoffs. It starts this week. I'm ready to get on the right side of that, jump on board maybe before they look good, especially after last week. I don't think a lot of people are going to go that route. You know, most people are looking here. They get on to FanDuel on Sunday morning. They see Russ. They're not clicking that button. Russ just sucked on Monday Night Football. Like prime time, everybody saw it. Not as many people are going to click that button. I'm willing to try to get ahead of the curve here, take Russ. I like Cortland Sutton. Jerry Jeudy had the touchdown last week, but it felt like he was targeting Sutton a little bit more, especially in some of those jump balls. 1 or 2 of those, if Sutton comes out with 1 or 2 of those, it's a completely different game for him last week. And if you're playing in happen again? Let me check my connection here real quick. Sorry about that. If you're checking in a game, or if you're going to be in a really small field lineup, maybe 50 guys, maybe 100, somewhere in there, I'm not afraid to go ahead and add Javonte Williams to the stack, right? So if you're going to play Russ, Javonte Williams, Cortland Sutton, Albert O, most people say that's bad, that's negative EV, that's too many players from one game. But if they come out and score 3 or 4 touchdowns, you might get all 4 of them, right? In a game that, again, I think they're going to try to dominate and keep their foot on the gas the whole time. All right, my third stack here, Lamar and Mark Andrews, skinny stacks. I mentioned that earlier, and I do like that. I don't really when I play Lamar, I usually will only skinny stack him. You don't need to double stack him. You can stack him with a Bateman. I'm not chasing the Duvernay thing last week. It was 2 long touchdowns. Maybe he's always going to be there, but I'm not going to chase that quite yet. I do like Bateman, but I like Mark Andrews way better. I think he's a lot safer. The Ravens DBs are pretty thin. They're injured. They lost another one this past week. So if you want to bring back a Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, definitely don't mind that. And another game that you could really get weird, you could just stack up the whole game here. You could play 5 players from this game. Maybe you play Lamar and Bateman and Andrews and Waddle and Hill. Like you can do that. And it's going to make sense. If you're saying, look, this is too low of a total, this game's getting into the 50s, I want to go ahead and leverage off the Raiders and Cardinals game. I'm going to go heavy into this game, play 4 or 5 guys from this game. I think you can get away with that in a game like this. I would like it better if there was some running backs, maybe to a Chase Edmonds instead of like a Waddle, something like that. I usually like it better to add a running back in there. I'm not going J.K. Dobbins, though, that's for sure. All right, let's build a couple teams here. You like it better like this, Chris? Is this how you like it? When you don't have to see my ugly face? Same, man. Same. But that's not how it works. Here we go. I'm going to find the right one. I'm trying to produce and talk and drink and give you guys good advice all at the same time. Let's have some fun here. Let's build a couple of lineups. I'm going to start with my first stack here and just go with the Raiders stack. I want to show you what it could look like. Obviously, you shouldn't go blindly and just play whatever lineups I build on here. These are we're just working through these, guys. Just want to kind of see what it's going to look like. How's the salary if we put these stacks in here? I need to bring back Hollywood is what I would like to do with this one. It's an afternoon game, so even if it comes in pretty highly rostered, we got time to get off of it early. So this is going to be, a popular play. This is going to be a mentioned earlier, a nice little Nick Chubb, Elijah Moore skinny or mini stack. Now we get really, really, really cheap with the rest of our plays, so that might not necessarily actually make sense in this play. It's just probably too much here for us. Don't lost you. Man, after last week, everything's going to hell in a handbasket this week. Somebody mentioned James Robinson earlier. We could throw him in here. I don't mind that. Do a James Robinson. We go cheap at Travis Etienne, but if we want to bring my back, I think he's going to be cool if you want somewhere like that. Don't really mind it. Let's go here. Actually, I do like Chase Edmonds. And Rashad Bateman's pretty cheap. And let's grab our defense. Not from this game. Not playing Cincinnati. They're too expensive. Oh, they didn't get as expensive as I thought they would. Oh, 39. I thought they went up to 5 this week. Thought that's what I heard. So they're not as expensive this week. You can get a little bit weird. You can flip the build here. Go Arizona if you wanted, or Las Vegas at home. Cincinnati, they're going to be very, very popular here. I don't hate it still, even if they're going to be popular. But I think I like New Orleans at home. They're probably my favorite home defense this week. Tampa Bay, obviously Tom Brady. But look, the weapons there and Tampa Bay are all injured. Leonard Fournette's injured. Mike Evans was on the injury list this week. It's a pretty banged up team right now, which is not ideal early in the year. I can play them by themselves. I don't necessarily have to stack up on a defense. So here I am. I got 6,600, and I've got a pretty popular Las Vegas stack, a not so popular mini stack with Chase Edmonds and Rashad Bateman. So what I could do is find another little mini correlation in the 1 p.m. game that I like, a little running back wide receiver here around 6,600. Let's go to that Washington-Detroit game that I talked about. Antonio Gibson, 7,400, probably a little bit too expensive, except I love that. DJ Chark here, 57, so you have a little mini correlation. Antonio Gibson, DJ Chark, don't mind that at all. Just a way you can really build around this Derek Carr pretty popular stack. You get a little bit weird with a couple mini stacks here in the morning and see how it goes. If it goes great, awesome. If not, look, we talked about late swap earlier. It goes bad in the first half. Tampa Bay kicks ass. Duvernay scores all the touchdowns again. Amon-Ra does everything. Gibson gets benched because he fumbles it again. Whatever the case is, you've got to flip it. You can't play the chalk anymore. I do think that's a really good spot to go to Denver because I don't think that they're going to be highly rostered. Let's see if you can fit these Denver players in here. Oh, yeah, you can, especially with Albert O. I mean, you could still take Javon. I mean, you could go all 4 Denver. That's probably a little much, but if you're super dead, what a weird and cool little place to go there. If you're not super dead and you kind of want a little bit of action still, maybe you can still be on this game a little bit with just like a Devontae Adams, Marquise Brown stack somewhere in there. So that's just what I look at when I do late swaps. I want to try to have those ideas ahead of time before I get there. What is a stack that you guys would like to see me run here? Let's clear this out. You guys chasing Greg Dortch this week? All right, let's build up this. I just kind of showed you a Broncos stack, what it would look like. Let's build a Lamar stack. This is that game. This is the game that Lamar's going to be popular. I'm just not sure how popular the entire game is going to be. And if it's not going to be super popular, I might like it a little bit more. I like Tyreek this week, and I'm going to skinny stack Lamar with Mark Andrews. Nice, easy way to start the roster is just by finding that stack that you want. You don't have to bring Tyreek back. You don't have to bring Jalen Waddle back, but I'm going to go ahead and choose to bring Tyreek back in this one. If I'm going to a defense here, I don't mind this Cleveland Browns defense. It's more expensive, so maybe we just get contrary and pay up for it. Go ahead and play Nick Chubb with that. You can play Kareem Hunt if you want, but let's give us a little secondary stack. And then let's just hammer these afternoon games. This is where all the money's at this week. Just like last week, all the plays are back here. There's so many different ways we can go. I probably can't get Debo in a build like this, but maybe you go Jeff Wilson, a nice little cheap option here. You could bring somebody back Seattle. I don't really like a lot of Seattle players this week, although Kenneth Walker is suiting up. I'm not going there, but he is playing this week. Rashad Penny's okay, but San Francisco's defense is pretty legit, and I don't necessarily want to go there. I could go Henderson, right, because now I know exactly how my morning went, my 12 o'clock game, so what's the rest of it going to look like? So if everything goes well here, I can eat a little chalk here in Darrell Henderson. I don't mind that at all. I'm going to Eat a little Daryl Henderson chalk. Maybe I bring back Drake London. He's a cheap option. I already have Mark Andrews, so I probably am not going to play two tight ends and go Kyle Pitts. And so if I need to bring somebody back, I can go Drake London. He should be lower rostered anyways. And it's just a nice little mini stack here for a game that should have plenty of scoring, mostly probably on the LA side. If you don't want anybody in Atlanta, I don't blame you. I can't get to Cooper Kupp, but I could go Allen Robinson. Ben Skowronek, maybe? Can I interest anybody? It's a little Ben Skowronek. I'm not interested in him, but you could potentially go there. This is just another way to get a little bit different, play the wide receiver and the running back together. And then we haven't talked a lot about this game. I don't like this game too much at all, truly. But if I needed to go there, if I needed to get really weird, Noah Brown here, 5,200 is pretty cheap, leaving me 6,100. I can't even get to a Cincinnati guy that I would play in this one. But Noah Brown's pretty cheap if you have to really think outside the box and get weird. We could go back to Houston, Denver. Melvin Gordon is at 6,000. Rex Burkhead, sexy Rexy. He's the RB1 there after all the hype on Dameon Pierce. Rex Burkhead's there. You could go to him at 5,800. Who do we have here? I don't think I want to get an Albert O type play there with him. As I think through this and trying to find this last mini stack here in the afternoon, I don't think I left myself enough, which probably tells me I'm probably not going to end up playing this Nick Chubb Cleveland defense with this stack. It just seems like I'm spending too much with Mark Andrews, Tyreek Hill, and Lamar Jackson. I just don't like none of that stuff that I was talking about I liked. So I probably am not going to do that. Oh, I don't really like anybody in this game except their running back, so maybe I go right back to this Washington game. We could stack up Terry McLaurin and Amon-Ra. That's probably too expensive. DeAndre Swift might not play, so if he doesn't play, we could go to Jamal Williams. Right? Jahan Dotson scored last week, so we could get just cheap here with a couple more weird stacks. And that, we could flip the build. Go a Detroit Lions defense. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you guys can go with this stack. Just know you're going to be spending a lot of money if you're taking that Lamar stack and bringing back Tyreek. I could bring back Jalen Waddle, save myself a little cash there. That wouldn't be that bad. Wilson is worth 14 points this week. Are we talking Russ? If Russ Wilson only scored 14 points this week, my next week's intro is going to be a hell of a lot worse than this week's because I'm going to lose a lot of money. Well, y'all, you've all stood with me here. Unless there's a stack you want to see real quick, I'll probably get out of here. Had a little internet issue there after about 50 minutes or so apologies for that. Camera issues, it kept going off. Apparently, I was breaking it over and over again. But I appreciate you being here, having a lot of fun. I just love building lineups with you guys, talking through each position. I liked this way a little bit more than just studs and values. I could talk about every single player or every single position. I like that a lot better. Hopefully you did as well. Let me know in the comments if you'd rather see me go through each position, maybe some teams. I'm just here for you all. I'm hoping to take the very little knowledge that I have to you all. Jeff Wilson. Okay, I got you. So Jeff Wilson is worth 14 points this week. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Seagrieve 28. Thank you, not thank me. Hopefully you win some money this week. Thank you all for joining me. Hit the like button on your way out. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 50. I'm looking for 100 subscriptions this season. Share my YouTube page. Go ahead and subscribe. Hit the like button on this video to let other people find it. Check out my season-long podcast, Another Damn Fantasy Podcast, presented by Stadium Rant. at stadiumrant.com. The things that we're doing over at Stadium Rant are phenomenal. We've got a website for every NFL team. We've got our feature writers section. Go check us out over at stadiumrant.com. You can find our podcast, Another Damn Fantasy Podcast, on Apple or Spotify. My co-host Dan and I, we break it down for you each and every week. We're really talking season long. We touch a little bit on daily, but I usually focus mostly on season long for that. And I bring my daily fantasy takes right here to you live on YouTube every Friday night. So come in, hang out with us, hit the chat, get in the chat. And we're just here to have some fun and drink a couple beers. Follow me on Facebook at the Rumbles of Red, on Twitter, as you see here, at Trevor S_FF. Good luck in week 2, and may the money gods be in your favor this week.